Good to meet you, Judy.
Hi, Stefan. Thank you so much for asking me to join you. I
No,
enjoyed listening to your conversation with Rod, and I love the idea of what you're looking at in terms of subject matter. So when you invited me, it's like, yes.
oh, that's very kind of you. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Yes, today's my day off, so that always is a good start, you know.
You mean day off from working or day off from
Yes.
worrying?
Yeah. Yes. Yes. From work. Yesterday was my day off from rowing. Today is my, day of getting back into taking care of myself.
Okay, okay.
Yes. Yes.
You're a top contributor in the Diamonds. I mean, you're clearly rowing frequently and posting a lot. Um, what is your fitness regime? Have you got a regime?
So my general structure is to try and row at least 4 days, ideally 5 days, and then 1 or 2 days of strengthening, conditioning kind of stuff. And that I've added more recently because, in part, um, as with most of us who are aging, having good muscle strength is important and balance. And
Yeah.
with somebody who's been diagnosed with Parkinson's, it became a higher priority to me. Um, I'm a very tall woman. So I used to be 6'2". I'm now 5'11", so I'm shrunk. I would like to gain some back, but we'll see. And um, when I first was diagnosed, they sent me to a physical therapist to just be assessed. And one of the comments both she and the doctor made was, yeah, we got to make sure you don't fall. It's a long way down. So, and my balance is okay. I've never had great balance. So it's been really important to me to work on that and make sure that that is something that I don't just sort of let happen. I have to approach it with consciousness. So strengthening and doing some balancing exercises and things like that is an important part of what I do. But rowing is something that I connected with on a visceral level. Um, Probably, I think it was in 2018 or so. I was having some really bad problems with my knee. I had pseudo gout, which is your body creates little crystals inside the joint that's like on the back of the bones and stuff, and they break off
Oh,
little bits, and it causes your joint to lock. It's incredibly painful. You don't know when it's going to happen. You don't know how long it's going to last. And it was starting to happen more often. And I was finding the activities I was doing at the time was either getting on a bike or occasionally doing an elliptical. And we had a gym at work that I would use. And those things I couldn't do when my knee was bad. And I was getting very frustrated and very out of shape. And I talked to the person at the gym and I said, look, I can't do the things I used to do, and I need to do something to take care of myself. And she said, why don't you try the rower? So I was like, okay, I'll do it. And they happened to have one C2 rower in the gym. And so I used to just work through my breaks. I started taking my breaks in the morning and the afternoon. And I started out just going 1 minute twice a day for my first week, sit down on that rower and just row for a minute. And then the next week, I did 2 minutes. And after that, 3 minutes, and so on until I was doing my 15-minute break. I was rowing twice a day. So I was doing a half an hour a day during my work day. And I loved it. It was fun. Years and years ago, I used to swim a lot. And I loved how it was rhythmic and meditative and full body. And it wasn't like a strain on my knees and joints. So rowing for me had a lot of the same boxes being checked. And I think the added benefit with the rower was that silly little monitor. And it was telling me how much I was getting done and at what pace and that sort of thing. And my job involves analyzing lots of data. I'm a data geek. I love data. I love the stories data can tell you and teasing those things out. So I was getting motivated in part too by seeing I'm going faster, and I'm getting better at this. And I felt better. I felt stronger, and I could feel my conditioning coming back. And then the pandemic happened. We got sent home. And so I was working from home, which I loved, but I was really missing my rower. So near the end, I think I was right at the beginning of Biden's second term, they sent out some checks, for stimulating the economy. And I took that check and got myself a rower. It was the best thing because then I could link my data feedback loop that I love so much onto the Concept 2 site, getting access to even more data, and more insight into how I was doing and progressing. And so for me, I immediately set 2 goals for myself. I wanted to row 1,000,000 meters, and I wanted to row a half marathon. And both of them felt super challenging at that moment.
Yeah.
Let's do this, And I've always been somebody who likes to have a goal, something that I'm working towards. And so no sooner than I had done that, and it took me a little over a year to get there, Rod Chin reached out to me and asked me if I would like to join the Diamonds. And I was like, perfect. I would love to, because I was sort of hitting this slump because I hit my 2 goals. It was like, okay, now what? Oh,
Yeah.
and so joining this group was fantastic because suddenly it was like I was learning so much. Before that, when I got the rower, I was doing a lot of research online, how to row efficiently was my big thing I would search for. And I would watch dark horse videos that a lot of people do and a bunch of other different things, trying to improve my technique. And I'm sure there was a lot of room for improvement in those early days, But when I came to the Diamonds, there was so much knowledge. Everybody was freely sharing and so much encouragement. And it was like, this is so great,
Yeah.
And as somebody who in gym class growing up was like the last kid picked for the team, I was not athletic. I was uncoordinated. I liked to do certain things, but I didn't have athleticism. I just didn't. And this was sort of like the polar opposite of that experience in terms of people being so encouraging and accepting and opening the door to what was possible. And it was so inspiring to see what people were doing and watch their growth and progression. So for me, it was just very natural to want to give back to that environment and continue to nurture and feed into that for other people who come into the group and, move into it. And social media can have some toxicity, and this feels like a wonderful bubble of, caring and nurturing and all that sort of thing. And I think as we age, for many of us, our ego becomes far less important.
Yeah.
We recognize the importance of connection. And I think that is part of what feeds this sort of sense of community.
Yeah.
There.
I'm sure it is, Judy. And it's interesting you talking about getting fascinated about what's possible. A lot of people in the Diamonds or outside Diamonds, it's probably because you sit in front of that computer looking at meters and seconds and whatever. You use the word meditative. I think it is meditative, curiously. But you always can't help yourself thinking, if I could just do this 100 meters a little bit quicker, or just bring the split down a tenth of a second or whatever. And then this idea of what's possible is continually updating itself.
Yeah. What I've learned in life as I've gotten older is that with my progression on the rower, starting with 1 minute twice a day, to me, baby steps is what it's all about. It's not like getting from a rookie to like superstar, like breaking records and all this stuff. And it's about just showing up and trying to do a little better and a little more each day, and staying aware of what you can do, not overdoing it and getting injured. And I think that's an important balance to maintain too. But just how can I get a little better? Where is there room for improvement? For me, working with Bill Nurge now for the last year or so as a coach has really pushed me to a whole next level in that regard. I remember the first video I sent him. I recorded it and I looked at it and I don't want to send this to him. I'm ashamed of so many things right now. And it was like, okay, Judy, just send it, and he is a wonderful human being. He was very kind. And I bared my soul in terms of being, I hate what I'm looking at, but I'm not going to get better without doing this. Yeah. And he was just so like, yes, there's room for improvement, but that's okay. And that, you start where you are. And that's always been my philosophy. And after some back and forth, he encouraged me to try the slides. And I was like, well, I don't know. And where am I going to put them? And all this stuff. And he was very patient. And the thing that sold me on him was it's easier on my body.
Yeah.
And that is so critical to me. And I notice when I was doing the CTC on the static machine versus on the slides, it's like, oh, this hurts. I just really feel it physically in my body in a way that I don't when I'm rowing on the slides. So yeah, it's those incremental things. And he is constantly like giving me little things to work towards and planting seeds with me. I'll do something. He's like, okay, what's next? And I'll tell him and I'll tell him what my goal is. He's like, I think you could do Y, instead of X. So then I like think about it and try and take that in and think about how is that doable and is it doable? And it's wonderful to have somebody who is supportive and also pushing.
Judy, you were rowing before your diagnosis then. So you were well into it for 4 years before your diagnosis?
So it was about 2.5 years ago that I was diagnosed and I had the rower at home. I was rowing regularly, but I think I was more willing to give myself a rest day here and there that now I'm like, do you need to rest or do you want to rest? And right now, exercise is my medicine.
Yeah.
So my symptoms actually abated a bit after my initial diagnosis when I got really sort of like, okay, we are committing to exercise as a way of staying healthy and staying as independent, autonomous as I can for as long as I can. And, exercise has way better side effects than most medications. So I will take it any day over that. And there are days where I log off the computer at the end of the day and I get a row. And I generally row at the end of my day because doing a hard workout brings on the symptoms a bit stronger. It's a stress on the body. And so like my hands will have really bad tremors and I'll be trying to use my phone and enter something or whatever. And it's comical. My hand is just like moving too much. And I have so little fine motor skill at that point. And so I don't want to be on the computer and trying to do my mouse or things like that and have that frustration. So I tend to row at the end of the day. And there's that challenge at the end of the day when you're tired and burned out to say, do I really want to do it? But in the end, I find I always feel better after.
So the rowing brings on symptoms.
It does. It amplifies them for a bit.
Okay.
And then it settles down again. And then the next morning, I'm better on days where I, had a hard workout.
Yeah.
Than I might be if I didn't work out the day before, or if I took 2 days off. I notice it. Okay. So like this last July, I did the half marathon as a fundraiser for the Michael J. Fox Foundation. And again, that was something stepping outside my comfort zone. I had done the 1.5 marathon, did it, but didn't love it. It was like, yeah, we don't want to do that again soon. But I read about the group who was doing the row from California to Hawaii. And one of the participants was somebody with Parkinson's. And I was just so blown away by their commitment to what they were doing. And I had already done some advocacy work with the Michael J. Fox Foundation. So I knew the work they were doing was important and good. And so I really felt like, okay, I've never done a fundraising event, but this is dear to my heart. Yeah. So I'm going to do it. And so I did that. And then a few weeks later, my mom went in the hospital. She had Parkinson's, and this was unrelated to the Parkinson's, but she was 89 years old. And at that point, she was very frail and had some degree of dementia and, had really declined a lot. She died about 2 months later. So my training really took a hit during that period and for a little while after. And I could see my symptoms were getting a little bit worse between the stress of what I was going through and also the lack of exercise to the degree of what was my normal routine. And that encouraged me in part to decide to retire later this year to give myself better balance and more ease in taking care of myself,
Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear it. And what do the medical professionals say about your commitment to pushing yourself on the rowing machine?
They love it. My doctor is always like, I wish I had more patients like that. They are 100% behind it. I also have AFib, had it for 10 or 12 years now. And my cardiologist loves, what I'm doing. And so I haven't met a doctor who has any concerns about what I'm doing, but my movement specialists who I see for the Parkinson's are especially encouraging. And they said, given what I'm doing, they expect it to progress very slowly. And, I check in with them every 6 months. And so far, they're like, you can take the medication if you want, but I wouldn't say you need it yet. So far, I manage it with my exercise, and getting enough rest, eating a healthy diet, all those things that we know we need to do to be our best.
At the same time, you're rowing and being coached. I'm interested to know, within the context of being coached, what it is that you want to achieve, rather than just. I mean, you could just settle for sitting on the machine and trying to keep fit, but sleep pushing yourself further.
Right, and that is a question I ask myself periodically. Why are you doing this, Judy? And my primary motivation, honestly, the foundational reason that I get on that rower as regularly as I do, or do the other training that I do as regularly as I do, is to take care of my health and well-being. That's number one. But that doesn't mean an additional motivation doesn't help. And I have found having some sort of goal that I am working towards. And when I first started on the slides, there were a whole bunch of world records that hadn't been claimed yet in my age group. And I was just like, cool, let's grab this one and that one. And I wasn't doing very well at that point because I was recovering from knee replacement surgery still. but it didn't matter. I was the first one who claimed some of those distances, and they were quickly taken away by a very speedy rower in Finland. And then we now have Barb Hill, who's a diamond, who has taken a bunch of those world records. But I got one of them back, and there's another one I'm targeting. For me, it's not like, oh, I hit a world record. It's much as like, I got a world record. Isn't that cool? It's just like, it's fun. And I recognize it's sort of a momentary thing, but it's also, it gives me something when I get on that rower to focus on and pay attention to and push myself beyond what I might do if I just got on there to just row, and check the box of like, okay, I did my exercise, And so I like having that. There's a competitive streak in me. There definitely is.
Yeah.
And even though I don't consider myself an athlete, as I said, there's a part of me that likes competing on whatever,
Yeah, well, you use the phrase health and well-being. So yeah, the health is I guess the physical stuff to some degree. But then the mental health and the mental well-being is potentially, I guess, you learning more about yourself or exploring things.
One of my neighbors, when I was in my early 30s, we were living in Framingham, and she was a very cool woman. She had 2 kids. They lived next door. Her husband was a very cool guy too, and we got very friendly with them. And she just had this sort of youthful energy about her. And I remember sort of asking her about that one time, and she was like, "So, someone once told me this, and I've been doing it ever since." She said, "Every year I do something that makes me uncomfortable."
Yeah.
And she said, "That keeps me young." And I was like, huh, I like that. And it's definitely something over the years that I've learned that you don't grow in any way without feeling uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And if you can't get comfortable with being bad at something, or like when you're learning something new on the rower, it's awful. You feel really awkward and uncomfortable, and it just feels wrong. But if you persist and you keep working through that discomfort, you can have progress, And so whether it's on the rower or in anything else, I've learned that discomfort's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Being crappy at something is okay as long as you try and show up. And if you're enjoying it enough, try it again and see if you can get better at it. And if you really, really hate it, then do something else that you're uncomfortable with. So
you also know that when you achieve that thing that you set out to achieve, there'll be something else.
Oh, there's always something else. Always. Yes. 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 There's always something on the horizon, and, something else to pay attention to. And that's the other thing. In addition to sort of being meditative, I find that the rowing keeps me in the moment and very present. And I need that. I'm the type of person who can get very much in her head about things. And it's good for me to be more present. And those are the moments I'm generally happier in my life, is when I'm most present rather than ruminating about things or whatever.
Yes. So that it's interesting you use the word ruminating. So that's anxiety and thinking about the future.
Or just catastrophizing or whatever. Yeah. I mean, I don't consider myself an anxious person necessarily, but I am a worrier. I'm so like my job right now, I'm a credit analyst for commercial loans. So we're looking at all the things that could go wrong, going into all the details of every aspect of the loan. And we're writing these reports that are like, 20 pages, up to 50 pages long, for senior management to decide whether or not to approve or not on a loan. And so my mindset is like right there. I can think of all the different ways that something could go wrong. And likewise, when we have to review all the loans in the portfolio every year, and it's looking for the problems, So I have a mind who can find those things, but that's a trap and it can be very dangerous. And so I have to bring myself back from that place where I'm very strong to a place where I'm present and I can just be present to what's around me, what I'm feeling, what I'm doing, whatever it is, So finding that balance between being sort of in my head and processing and, all that kind of stuff to the person who can just be present and more calm.
And you talked about Bill Nudge coaching you for the physical aspect of rowing. What you've just been describing is mental work, or have you had professional help for
I
that?
did.
Don't mean to be nosy, but you sound like you've taught.
Yeah. I it was after my dad died. My dad died suddenly of a heart attack. He was 67. He very strong history of heart disease in his family. He was the youngest of 9 brothers and sisters. His father died when he was 2, I think. And he had one brother die at like 35, just dropped dead on the sidewalk. They all had heart attacks and that sort of thing. He had one brother who lived into his 70s, and his sister also died in her 70s. So heart disease was there. We always knew it was looming, and he did a lot to take care of himself in that regard. While he was jogging, and then he started doing just more walking, but it was something that loomed. And could it have been avoided for a bit? Probably, but he lived a happy life and he retired early-ish, and he focused on acting and that sort of thing and really loved it. Did moved from community theater to doing a few professional performances as well. So, but it was the suddenness of it that just, I thought I was okay. And then a few months later, I was in a horrible depression, just really, really bad. So that led me to getting therapy. And I probably was in regular therapy for about 7 or 8 years.
Okay.
And over that time, I really did develop a toolbox that helped me recognize the importance of being present and being, centered and letting go of those worry thoughts, and learning how to prioritize. Like when I got the news about the Parkinson's, my mom had Parkinson's, my grandfather had Parkinson's. So I was diagnosed very early, I think because I was attuned to something was off. I was having mild tremors and a few other little things going on, some balance things here and there. And I brought it up with my doctor, and they sent me, to see the movement specialist. And it was just, I didn't react particularly to it. And I remember a friend going, "You seem so calm." And I'm like, well, what am I going to do? This is where I am. This is my reality now. So what I'm going to do is do what I can, what's in my control, to take care of myself and give myself the best life I possibly can with the cards I'm playing. So.
And you're clearly doing that. I mean, I think both your parents would be very proud of you on the rowing machine, doing half marathons and
My dad would have loved it. And I remember talking to my mom. It was in the last, probably about a month or so before she passed away. And she was in and out. Sometimes you'd have these kind of weird conversations, but it was like, okay, this is where we are today. So let's go with it. When you just be present to where she was. And I said something to her because I was looking for something to talk about because she was just quiet. And I said, "Oh, I did a world record today on the rower on this distance." She's like, "Why didn't you tell me that sooner?"
Yeah.
And it surprised me because she was never somebody who did anything athletic. She was always like, I'm always really busy. I don't have time to exercise. And she was very active because I was one of 6 kids. So
Yeah.
she had, and we were all very close together in age. And then she worked. And so she was a very busy woman for many, many years, And I think if she had more of a habit of exercise as she got older, she probably could have helped a little bit with her Parkinson to manage it, but didn't even like admitting she had it.
Yeah.
I don't have it. Those medicines are stupid. I don't like them. So, but she taught me so many things, and we had a complicated relationship in many ways. But the day she died, so near the end, she couldn't swallow well, and that was the Parkinson's. And so I was talking with the woman who was her primary caretaker, and I was like, so she's not even eating ice cream, because that was one of the things we were giving her near the end. He was like, what flavor did you give her? And she said, vanilla. That's the problem. I was like, let me go to the store. I'm going to get some coffee ice cream. She loves coffee ice cream. So went and got it. And we gave her, she put a little bit on her mouth, and her face just lit up. And then she opened her mouth wide and took in some more. And you could see how much she was enjoying that ice cream. So the day she died, I had left her place a little bit before she passed away. And my sisters called me. And so I stopped on the way home, and I bought a little little teeny cup of coffee ice cream, brought it home, and sat and looked at pictures of my mom and had some coffee ice cream, and really sort of dwelled in all the things she's taught me over the years. She had huge compassion for other people. She was always somebody, like, if you were in the grocery store or something, the person who was waiting on, ringing her out, she would give them a compliment about something. She always had something kind to say to other people. And I think she taught me that, and I see it now in my kid,
Yeah.
that they do that. And it's like this legacy that I'm very proud of, that I think is very cool,
Yeah.
And I think there's so much we can learn from our parents, both what they did so well,
Yeah.
and what we want to carry on, as well as what we want to avoid.
We don't always appreciate that while they're around, though.
Right. No, but it keeps them alive in us if we can draw on that after they're gone.
It does indeed. And as I said, I'm sure your parents would be very proud of you, and you should be very, very proud as well as your with your fundraising. How is that going?
So I raised, because of the 3-to-1 match, I think it ended up being just over $20,000 that was raised for them in that event. So I don't like asking people for money. It's like, oh, and so I don't know. They're doing an event right now, 30 miles in April, doing any kind of movement you want.
Yeah.
Part of me is like, okay, I could do that. It's a fundraiser, and I guess I could do it and just put it out there, and not feel like, because I far exceeded my goal in terms of what I raised. And it just blew my mind. There were so many people in the Diamonds who were very generous, coworkers, so many people who stepped up and did things that just blew me away. And it really makes a difference, that they were doing that. So, okay, we're training hard for this because I'm not letting anybody down, So, yeah.
You exceeded a lot of goals, Judy. Let's finish with perhaps what's next for you on the erg. What are you going to do next?
So I'm working on a 1-hour row right now.
Okay.
That I think will be my fastest 1 hour on either static or slides. It's definitely going to be on slides, but it'll be a faster time than even I was doing, before I started working with Bill. And I did a crappy one earlier in the season. It was okay, but I wasn't loving it. And I was like, I know I can do better. And so focused on my training when I got back to it after my mom passed away, and I really got focused again. And it right now, it looks like it's going to be way better than I thought I was going to be able to do.
Wow.
A few months ago. So that makes me happy. Some of my rows recently, like the 5K, the 6K, and then the 30-minute, wow. Like I couldn't believe what I was capable of.
Yeah.
So I did the 5K first, and then I did a 6K, and I was a little bit faster on my pace. Yeah. And then I did the 30-minute, and I was way faster on my pace than both of those. It was like, how does that happen? And it happens because of sort of that repetition and learning and improving and continually focusing each time I sit down on that rower to say, okay, how can this be better?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great lesson. Well, this podcast is called Better with Age. So I think you've explained. That's
not too much, but
not at all. Thank you for talking to me very much.
It was very much fun. I enjoyed it a lot. Take care, and I look forward to watching episodes going forward and other people's experiences and advice and all that sort of stuff.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Alrighty. Bye-bye.